host, Peter Blake. Welcome to another edition of Timeout with my co-host, Mr. Chris Cuff. How you doing today, my friend?
What's up, man? You have high energy. You must be a Cowboys fan.
Well, I don't know about that, but there's a lot of Cowboy fans that seem to be talking all kinds of mess. We'll definitely talk about the National Football League and what was Week 11. And then after that, we may get into some college football, talk about your Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Miami Dolphins, and also kind of have some flexibility tonight, if you will. Kind of think outside of the box because we got a couple guests on. Austin David at 7:15, who covers soccer. So we'll be talking about the World Cup in Qatar, if I pronounced that correctly. And then at 7:30, we will have James Sang Lee, who's a martial artist. We'll talk with him. And as always, we'll be giving each other timeouts. We'll be, going back and forth on this. And definitely, if you see this online, definitely interact with us. So let's get into it. Week 11, and I think the big-time story had to be the impressive showing of the Dallas Cowboys, 40-3 over the Minnesota Vikings, who are coming off probably one of the best games of the year versus the Buffalo Bills when they win it. But nothing showed up besides that Cowboy offense, besides that Cowboy defense. And at the end of the day, I got to ask you, how impressed were you by that Cowboy win last Sunday?
Well, as a Cowboy fan, we got Thanksgiving week. We got Thanksgiving very early. I'm so thankful. I slept very well Sunday night to see just everything go so smoothly. Dak with no stupid mistakes like in the previous game. The defense was on fire. Minnesota didn't know what to do. Running backs running all over the place. It was amazing. The Cowboys just did it all over the place. Tony Pollard is amazing.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering, is Tony Pollard your next running back? Because a lot has been talked about with Ezekiel Elliott ever since he's gotten that big-time contract extension. His yards per carry have basically gone down. And on top of it, if Dak can play like this, and you look at his numbers, this goes back all the way his rookie year. These are the kind of numbers he used to have. 22 for 25, 276 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. That offensive line coming together. I don't necessarily think it's just Dallas being one of the best teams in the NFC. I think it comes down to not only no friggin' logic, but also maybe the Minnesota Vikings are just a little bit overrated.
It wasn't prime time, so that's not an excuse for Kirk Cousins. That's usually his excuse. He falters on these big prime time games, but I don't know. He just didn't do it. He threw for 105 yards, but he didn't have a lot of time to work. They held Dalvin Cook to 72 yards rushing. So, but they do have some really nice receivers. He just couldn't get the ball to him.
Yeah, and then on top of it, that defense coming in, 42 sacks, leading the National Football League. They're ahead of the New England Patriots. They had 7 sacks, and that was the big-time story. When you can put pressure on Kirk Cousins, he becomes a totally different quarterback. Now, coming up on Thanksgiving, and I don't know about you, but I love Thanksgiving football. You got the Cowboys and the Giants, who, by the way, the Giants are coming off a loss to the Detroit Lions. And don't look now, the Lions have won 3 in a row. But you look at that game, a division rival like the New York Giants versus the Dallas Cowboys. Who do you favor and why?
Well, of course, I favor the Cowboys. I'm a Cowboys fan. So, that's like a no-brainer.
Well, see, I didn't know that. I'm not going to try to hold that against you.
Yeah, don't hold it against me. You can't. I'm smart. Just give it to me, man. Give it to me, Pete. I'm a smart guy.
Not
Cowboys.
That's it. Fan,
That's it.
That's it. You're not a Stephen A. Smith fan, are you?
I don't even watch him anymore. I see him with a big cowboy hat on. I turn the channel. I don't even try and listen to that. That is just some, oh my gosh, over the top nonsense. Him and Michael Irvin, ridiculous, man. It's just ridiculous. It is funny. I'll give it to you. It is absolutely. He's got a rival now, so
yes, entertaining television. At the end of the day, Thanksgiving, having the Cowboys, having the New York Giants, it seems like it makes sense in Dallas. And whomever wins this game not only controls their own destiny. Yes, I can't even say it today. In the NFC East, of course, keeping track with the Philadelphia Eagles. But of
Yes.
course, this also may lead to who is going to get OBJ. That was the other big story that came out
Yes.
on Sunday. OBJ is selecting or choosing between two teams at this juncture. It's going to be either the New York Giants or this Dallas Cowboys. So,
Right.
who do you think wins this game? And whomever wins this game, do you think it gets OBJ? And does it favor your Dallas Cowboys to basically sign him with Micah Parsons talking to him online, with OBJ being impressed, with, that wide receiver always wanting to be loved? It seems like the Cowboys and Jerry Jones are the perfect place for OBJ. What do you say, Chris?
I think it would be fantastic to have OBJ. It's a little scary because you think of like Antonio Brown, someone with all those skills and can be a distraction in the locker room. But after seeing him in LA and really in Cleveland, he wasn't too much of a distraction in those places. So I really they can definitely use him to strengthen the wide receiving core. I mean, they are doing well with what they have, but they can always be better. I do want to push back and give a timeout to Jerry Jones, automatically declaring the Cowboys to the Super Bowl. Slow down, Jerry. Hold up, man. Slow down. Slow down. We're not there yet.
Yeah, I definitely give a timeout to all the Cowboy fans because as an impressive win it was against the Minnesota Vikings, it is the National Football League, which either means not for long or no freaking logic. And I actually think that Minnesota is a little bit overrated.
Yes.
So I want to see what they do the rest of the year, what they can do in this November, December type of football, because I feel like with all the expectations and the way of this offense and how impressive they have been this year, if they're out in the first round, I almost feel like Mike McCarthy is going to get a pink slip. Bring me your playbook at the end of the day, because anything but a Super Bowl at this juncture, Chris, I feel like it's going to be a disappointment, not only to Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboy organization, but their fan base.
Right. I agree as well. I think Mike McCarthy will be on his way out if he doesn't make it to the Super Bowl. What are the stories we got going on?
Well, other stories, the Philadelphia Eagles survive once again the Indianapolis Colts. Jeff Saturday coaching that team and getting the most out of them. But Jalen Hurts has a big game. They come back, win 17-16. The other story was adding Ndamukong Suh, Linval Joseph. It seems like it's definitely solidified their defense because they held Jonathan Taylor under 100 yards.
Yes, so that was impressive.
About the Cowboys, we talked about the Vikings. We're going to talk about the Kansas City Chiefs. With those moves and their play lately, are we going to give the Philadelphia Eagles a timeout and say they're not the best team in the National Football League? Or are we going to say they are the best team in the National Football League?
They're 8-1, and they are solid. I still, even being a Cowboys fan and the Eagles not being my favorite, they are just so strong with Jalen Hurts back there. I can't bet against them. I really can't. Big fan of Jalen Hurts after what happened in Alabama, resurrecting his career in Oklahoma, and now finding a home in Philly. I like to see him succeed. I'm pretty happy about that. So I can't put his time out on Philly yet. I think they still have what it takes to be a strong contender for the Super Bowl.
And I would say timeout, because until Jalen Hurts shows me something consistently, because lately they haven't played that great. Did they solve all those problems with Suh and Joseph? It remains to be seen, because I still feel like the Indianapolis Colts are not a great team. In fact, they're playing hard for Jeff Saturday, but they have a lot of things they have to work on. But until Philadelphia shows me something consistently and they win more than one game in the playoffs, I'm not calling them the best team in the National Football League. In fact, I'm going to call this next team, as much as it pains me being down here in Tampa Bay, of course, the Kansas City Chiefs, and ho-hum, Patrick Mahomes, another fourth quarter comeback, Travis Kelce, another couple of touchdowns. I just don't understand this, Chris. Not only Patrick Mahomes, as talented as he is, but how does somebody not cover Travis Kelce? Derwin James, Pro Bowler, had all kinds of problems all night long. It just makes some sense of this. This team just continues to get it done, especially in the fourth quarter versus the AFC West and others.
Over and over again, they just get it done. They really just get it done. I love watching the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes do their thing. Can we go to before we go to our guest, can we go to my favorite story?
What's up?
First of all, the crushing loss of the New York Jets to the New England Patriots. And then the quarterback's comments, I mean, after the game.
Well, yeah, a barn burner, if you will, 3-3, and then the Jets in so good of Jets fashion, which basically means to most fans just in the season. And I think there was a lot of fans out there who wanted to do that after losing to the Patriots 10-3 on a punt return. But when Zach Wilson was asked in the press conference if he felt like he was a contributing factor or the offense did enough, he said no. And now the coach, Robert Saleh, has come out and basically been non-committal. They may start Mike White. They may start Joe Flacco. And I'm telling you right now, you look at this guy's numbers, 9 for 22, 77 yards. And Chris, they had 2 yards of offense in the second half. Chris, you could have more offensive yards than that. Just offensive showing by the New York Jets.
I could run scared around the end, do a jet sweep on my own and get 2 yards. Not a problem. I got that.
Right.
I got that. But I mean, come on. Not really, I mean, come on. So everyone is on him about that. All of the pundits all over the media are on him about that. His teammates are on him about that. I mean, come on, dude. I think he's going to learn about his nonchalantness about that after this incident. For sure, man.
Anthony McFarland was one of those pundits out there who's talked about it, of course, doing Monday Night Football during Monday Night Football Countdown for ESPN in Mexico City between the 49ers and the Cardinals. And he had this to say. He says that Wilson, whose uncles are JetBlue founder David Neilman and Health Equity co-founder Stephen Neilman, may have a hard time trying to accept accountability. Him talking about Wilson. He says, let's understand who this young man is before we ask him to accept accountability. He's a young man who grew up with a lot of money. I don't think he's ever had to accept accountability. So now on the biggest stage, we want this quarterback to accept accountability. Of course, Steve Young jumped in and disagreed. That doesn't resonate at all. He's a tough-minded kid. Of course, Young having his back because Zach Wilson attended BYU, much like Young. And, of course, Young knows about the troubles of playing with a bad team and having those troubles because he played with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers until he was traded to the 49ers. So he knows everything that basically Zach Wilson is going through. But does McFarland deserve a timeout on this with these comments? Were they too personal or are they spot on in your opinion?
He's right on point. He's right on point. This guy's a brat, man. He needs to get a spanking. It's time. Give a media spanking. Time out.
Well, honestly, I agree with McFarland on this. I don't think he got too personal. I think he's spot on.
Yes.
And with his coach coming out and basically saying in so many words, I'm not behind him. We may be looking at another starting quarterback for this Jets team. Look, they're 6-4. They're still in playoff contention. So if your main position is Zach Wilson and he's not getting it done and you're not getting enough offense at the end of the day, maybe you do need to switch quarterbacks. And it's a shame because you look around the National Football League with the quarterbacks that were drafted. We were talking off air about Trevor Lawrence and his improvement and his development. Justin Fields, of course, showing flashes of brilliance. And, of course, Mac Jones, who was in that game and has already taken the Patriots to the playoffs. Right now, Wilson clearly looks like a bust.
Absolutely. And, Pete, our guest is here. Austin David is waiting to come in and join us. Austin has been writing about Orlando soccer since 2013, working and doing articles for the Mainland and MLSsoccer.com. He's worked with as a staff writer for OrlandoCity.com and the Osceola News Gazette. He's also contributed to Orlando City and Orlando Pride, soccer's websites. He does have and also did coverage for the Orlando Sentinel, so big time. He's also co-host of Community Sports Report, local show on 91.5 FM every Thursday from 4 to 5 p.m., as well as the producer and co-host of the weekly Orlando Soccer Show podcast. And he's the voice of UCF men's soccer on ESPN+. So, Austin, join us, man. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Yeah, I have done a lot. When you talk about it all, it makes me realize, I've been doing this for for 10 years almost.
10 years.
I was wondering if he sells hot dogs out in this food.
It's funny. I try and do as many different things as possible. And so every time someone asks me, "Hey, what are you up to these days?" I'm like, you got like 25 minutes?
Right. Oh my gosh. So, I mean, it's World Cup time, and you're the first person I thought about when it comes to talking soccer. Man, so first of all, okay. How do we pronounce the name of this place? How do we properly pronounce the name of this place? Fox is going Qatar all over the place. Other people are saying Qatar. Some other people are saying gutter. What's the proper way to pronounce the name of this place?
So, if you go by how it's pronounced in Arabic, it's Qatar. And the closest thing Americanized to it is Qatar. A lot of people are saying Qatar because it sounds close to it, but the phonetic pronunciation, I believe, is Qatar. Okay. You're not wrong either way. Most people understand, where you're talking about, but
okay.
I feel like because the Fox broadcast is sponsored by Qatar and they're saying Qatar, if they were saying it wrong, they'd be in trouble. So I'm going with Qatar.
Yeah, I was surprised they pronounced it that way, but I guess they got the okay to do that.
How surprised are you by United States yesterday against Wales? Tying it up with a draw. I think that's probably one of the most disappointing aspects of soccer because I'm into football and basketball and baseball, and you usually have a winner more times than not. But in soccer, you have a draw. First and foremost, what did you think of that effort by the United States team yesterday?
It's a tale of two halves. First half was some of the best soccer I've seen the U.S. play in quite a long time, actually. It was productive. It was positive. They were making good runs. They got a goal. And then the second half was the complete antithesis of that. They went from being the protagonist to being on the back foot, defending, getting hit on the counter, couldn't stop certain plays. It came down to a penalty that Wales scored in the 82nd minute, which, I mean, that was just a really poor foul on Walker Zimmerman's part. He should never have gone to ground on that situation.
Right.
Gareth Bale is back behind, his back's towards goal. You're not even... There's no danger for him to score.
Right.
There's no reason for you to go to ground. Just keep him in front of you. But Zimmerman, who is the MLS Defensive Player of the Year, goes to ground. And, of course, all the non-MLS fans have something more to gripe about by saying, well, he's an MLS player. He shouldn't be in the World Cup squad anyways. So that's a whole nother thing. There's active American fans that are anti-MLS.
Yeah.
And it's a very interesting sect of fans because they hate any American player that plays in MLS. They think that they need to be playing in Europe in order to be good enough to play in the national team. So, but yeah, I mean, honestly, if the goal felt like it was coming, whether it was a penalty or whether it was from open play, it just felt like the dam was going to break at some point, and it did. And then once it did, there was no answer for it. They couldn't get anything going forward. There was maybe half chances here and there in the last 10, 15 minutes. But, I mean, there's so much more that they can work on. It's not the worst result they could have gotten, but it certainly doesn't help. Because if they win that game and they win against Iraq, who certainly doesn't look to be a team that can beat the U.S. at any means, then they're on 6 points and they're probably through.
Right. And then talk about England. How they opened against Iran.
Yeah. Again, Iran doesn't look the team to beat by any stretch of the imagination. They lost 6-2 to England. They ran roughshod. It was scoreless for the first half hour, and then England scored 3 in the last 15 minutes of the game, or in the first half. And then they scored another 3 in the second half. So Iran is not a problem. I think every team that plays them should beat them. It's a matter of finishing your chances, and that's been the biggest problem with the U.S. throughout this entire qualifying or the lead up into this game.
Yes,
is they create chances, they hold possession, they play well, but who's finishing the chances for them?
Right,
consistently. I mean, Ricardo Pepi was the guy in qualifying. They left him at home. They said, we don't need you. We've got other guys. And that
was my next question about the roster that they brought over there.
Yeah, that was a big point. big point of contention to lead Ricardo Pepi at home. His big issue was at Groningen, where he was prior to where he is now in the Netherlands. He wasn't playing. He wasn't doing well, and the times that he was playing, he was getting spot minutes. So he wasn't in a good run of form at the time. But then when he joined his new club, he started scoring. He's been on a great run of form. And so it was very baffling for both Ricardo Pepi and for every U.S. men's national team fan to leave your guy at home. But because he hadn't been called up for an extended period of time with the U.S., I feel like Greg Berhalter said, well, I want to go with the guys that I've been calling up. I don't want to bring in a surprise. I don't want to try and mess up the chemistry that these guys have been building every time that we've called them up. So let me call in the guys that we have been calling up, that I've gotten extended looks at within our system, because ultimately it's not necessarily about the player, it's about the system. Who's the best fit for the system? Because in World Cups, it can go so many different ways. You have to have a team that is resilient when things go wrong. And this team is incredibly young. You need players that you can rely upon coming off the bench that can kind of settle things down. And that was one of the biggest things against Wales, is the guys that came in didn't settle things down. They caused more problems than they helped. So
absolutely,
that's another big thing heading into Friday's game, is once these guys run out of steam, once these guys, go 40, 60 minutes full strength, who's going to come in to supplant them? Are they going to be able to continue on and keep that level of intensity? Because England's squad is deep. They've got guys that are playing in the Premier League and starting for their respective teams. Like, these guys are bona fide stars on their teams. And for the U.S., I think you can point to maybe like 3 or 4 guys that are playing in high-level soccer, but not necessarily stars within their team. And so it's very much a David versus Goliath mentality here.
Yes.
A lot of people are saying it's 1776 all over again. But that's always the joke when it comes to when these teams play each other. It's always the joke. And the last time these two teams played each other in the World Cup, Robert Green, the goalkeeper for England, made a absolutely egregious error that ended the game 1-1. And that game, that point, helped the U.S. win the group in 2010 after Landon Donovan scored against Algeria to win the game. I remember I was in England at the time when that game was happening. I was watching the England game when they were playing whoever else was in the group. And England was top of the group at the time. U.S. was about to lose. They were about to not make it to the next stage. Like, they were third place. They score the goal. They go top of the group. Everyone in the pub is pissed. Yeah. And it was I was sitting there like, I can't celebrate. If I show any like happy emotion, people are gonna like kill me.
Right. So just keep it quiet. Just hide in your beer and just.
Is that the biggest challenge that you think, Austin, on Friday? Is that star power by England that could intimidate, if you will, a young team like the USA?
I don't know if necessarily intimidation is the right word, because a lot of the guys that are playing for the U.S. They play in the Premier League, like Brendan Aronson, Tyler Adams, Christian Pulisic. They all play in the Premier League, and they play against these guys all the time. Now, it's a different story when you're playing with guys that you grew up playing with. I think that kind of helps rather than hurts them. They have a little bit more trust within each other rather than it's their teammates for their club teams. They have a little bit more history together. I would hope that helps. But at the same time, these guys are getting paid millions and millions of pounds to be the best players on their teams. I mean, I can talk about the front three of Harry Kane, Raheem Sterling, Bukayo Saka. I mean, these guys are starters for Arsenal, Tottenham, and Chelsea, respectively. Right. And those are some of the biggest clubs in the world, not necessarily just in England. So when we talk about those three guys compared to the front three of Christian Pulisic, who's not even a starter for Chelsea now, and then you have Josh Sargent, who's starting for Norwich in the second division of England, and then you have Tim Weah, who's starting for Lille in France. It just doesn't compare the two.
Before we go, Austin, can you talk briefly about the big shocker that happened between Argentina and Saudi Arabia? Mind blower.
Oh, that was crazy. I tried to wake up early for that, and I watched the first 15 minutes. I saw Messi score a penalty in the 10th minute, and I'm like, all right, I can go back to sleep for a little bit. And then I wake up, and the game's over, and I'm like, how did this happen? And I watched the 2 goals. I mean, Saudi Arabia's strikes were absolutely spectacular.
Yes, they were.
Take no credit away from them.
Right.
Their goalkeeper came up with some very big saves, but man, a lot of people picked Argentina to win the whole thing, not just get out of the group, but win the whole thing. And with today's results, Saudi Arabia is the top of the group, which is just absolutely wild. But this is the fun thing about the World Cup. I am pro team chaos always. I love when things like this happen because it throws everything out of whack, and it really makes it for just very fun. You know, kind of like when Leicester won the Premier League. It was like that was just full team chaos. Like a team came out of nowhere, won the whole thing, beat up all of the long-standing teams. It's another reason I love MLS is because any team can win it any year.
So true.
It just so happened that this year the team with the most money won. So that was a bit more on par comparatively to previous years. But it's tons of fun when things like this happen. I was hoping that Australia would do it to France today, but then France scored 4 unanswered, and that kind of went out the window. But there's still a number more days to go, a number more games. It's always going to be fun to see who makes it out of the group stage, because that's when it gets really fun. That's when you start seeing overtime going into penalties. Then you actually get winners. You don't get draws. So I think that's going to be a lot more fun for American audiences, even if America doesn't make it through, is you finally get to see, like, this team's going to win no matter what. It may take a half hour of penalties, but someone's going to win.
Oh, the penalties, the yellow cards, oh, man.
Yeah, flopping like LeBron James on the field. One last question for me, Austin, and we'll let you go. What is the shot here for U.S. to move on? How far can they go? What's the limitation on this team, in your opinion?
I think they need a result against England, whether it's a win or a draw. They need something, because then you're heading into the 3rd game against Iran, and you're leaving it up to chance. If England beats the U.S., they're in. There's really no competition there. I think that the England would probably sit some of their players for the game against Wales, which means Wales is going to go all out. If they win and the U.S. win, Wales is in because they have more points or goal differential or whatever. So I think that if the U.S. want to have a shot, they need a draw, and then you get the win against Iran and you're in second. And I think if you get into second, you're playing the first place team in Group A, which is potentially the Netherlands. That's tough.
That is tough. Yeah.
And I don't see them winning that, but we've seen crazier things happen before. So
it's the World Cup. I mean, it's tough. It's tough all the way around. You have teams like Iran here and there, but the further you go, I mean, it's just
it's a different, like, it's just like when you have the regular season and playoffs for any sport, it becomes an entirely different season because you don't abide by the same rules as the regular season. I mean, look at the NBA. I think there's been a number of players that have said it becomes a different season. Like, you can be a good regular season player, but when it comes to the playoffs, if you're not a good playoff player, then you're not elite. You have to be both. I think somebody talking about Ben Simmons because they're playing the Nets are playing the Sixers tonight. Yeah, well, I mean, the Sixers are without 3 of their starters, Maxey and Embiid and Harden. It's not going to be great. But they were talking about him, and they was like, yeah, he's not an elite player because he can't perform in the playoffs. And we've seen some of these players over the course of their careers, like Messi or Ronaldo, when they get into knockout stages in World Cups, they just fall flat. Right. Messi can be one of the best players in the world, but if he doesn't come up in clutch moments when they mattered to make a run towards the final, then it becomes an issue. And it's like, okay, well, how does this hamper your legacy? So there's a lot going on within those moments, but
absolutely.
It's definitely fun.
Cool.
That's the definite thing.
Austin, thank you so much for joining us and taking time to join us here. We'd love to have you back. Maybe we get to the knockout round. We'll talk some more soccer, some football at Qatar, and we'll have some things going on, man. But thank you again for joining us, man.
Of course, man. Appreciate you having me.
Happy Thanksgiving. All right,
you
man.
too.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, guys. So this is Timeout. I'm your host, Peter Blake, along with my co-host, Mr. Chris Cuff. Some great information there about the World Cup. I'm not going to lie. I've not been the biggest fan, but I'm getting into it. I'm hoping U.S. Moves on Friday, but it's going to be a tough matchup versus England, of course. And he talked about it, all the star power they have.
It has been awesome. I haven't been a soccer fan. I watched World Cups in the past, but slowly got into it. And then we started covering Orlando City. And then we started following the U.S. men's national team. And seeing this is just, it's the best in the world. It's amazing. Speaking of amazing, our next guest is just about ready to join us. Mr. James Sang Lee is on. How you doing, James?
Hey, what's happening, guys? Great to see you guys.
How are you, man?
Welcome to Timeouts. Yeah.
Yes, Peter, thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely.
How are you guys doing?
Man. Thank you for joining us, man.
Yeah, talking about the NFL, talking about soccer now, some martial arts, and of course.
Wait. Did you see how he just shifted his chair? So you see all the belts behind him on the screen.
Hold on, I'm just gonna let me just do this really quick.
I feel like we need an intro here on Timeout for you to tell us everything that you do here. Welcome to once again Timeout.
Oh man, great to be on Timeout. You know what? Love being on the show, guys. Thanks for having me. For those of you who don't know me, James Sang Lee, 4-time ISKA world champion. I had the great privilege of God give me the skill to be in martial arts 7 times in the ESPN final. Great to be on the show. Obviously, I love fighting, love sports, and so thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, what got you into that? What was your inspiration to get into that sport, and what do you think is one of the contributing factors of why you've had so much success?
Great questions. So, Peter, I saw Bruce Lee in the 1970s in an action film, Enter the Dragon, and I was like hooked. Right, so here I am, just to kind of give you background. So my family's from Hong Kong, China, but I grew up in the Midwest, Madison, Wisconsin, little suburb, Stoughton, Wisconsin. So you got to imagine this little Chinese kid surrounded by Norwegians and blonde hair, blue eyes. And I'm thinking like, well, who's my hero? And I saw Bruce Lee Enter the Dragon in the 70s. And I was like, whoa, I want to do that. And so martial arts became my thing. And it just kept going. I would study hand-to-hand combat, karate, kung fu, taekwondo, jiu-jitsu, and it's great to see the sport expand, especially in the mixed martial arts. But to your question, what would be the success for me? I just kept going. Obviously God gifted me to be fast and strong and flexible, but I just kept going. And, I had some great opportunities, some great coaching, and God blessed me with a lot of wins.
Now, you said about Lee, once upon a time in Hollywood, you also said you're a stunt man. Now, there's been a lot of controversy out there that Bruce Lee would never lose to some type of stunt man. And what was your thought process on that? Bruce Lee, this great fighter, a fist of fury, like you said, Enter the Dragon. Yeah. He's not losing to a stunt man. But then again, you're like the best of both worlds. You love Bruce Lee, but you're also a stunt man yourself. So go ahead and talk about that event that happened in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
That's a great thing. A lot of controversy over that. Let me give you some context over that as well, right? Okay. So I did a film in the late 90s, almost 2000, Lethal Weapon 4 with a different Lee, Jet Li, okay? Mm-hmm. And to give you an idea, so you got all these amazing world-class martial arts brought in by Warner Brothers. We're going to film with Mel Gibson. And so this was Jet Li's, sort of American debut film, right? And so we're all like in this, like, man, we all grew up watching martial art films. We all know who's the who and who's the champion. And so we were kind of in this, like, how good is Jet Li, right? So I'm going to give you context of Bruce Lee here in a second.
Okay.
And so Jet, we're all one day, and back then at Warner Bros., the black limo comes in, and Jet's pulling in, and he's with Corey Yun. And so the Yun brothers, and all of them were So for those of you who know Matrix, so Yoon Won Ping did Matrix. This is Yoon Kwai, his brother, right? So Yoon Kwai's coming in, Jet Li's coming in, Limo's coming in. We're like, how good is Jet Li? Is he just a movie guy? Is he just a stunt guy that could act? You know, we're like, how good is he? So we see Jet Li, and there's a fight scene that's made for him. He literally watches the fight scene, and then all of a sudden he's like, whoosh, and he's like going so fast. We were like, oh my gosh, this dude is like better than world champion, whatever that content. We're like, he's better than us. And so he was so fast. So now come back to Bruce. So you got to understand, this is Bruce Lee, you know, 25 years ago type of thing. Yeah. And they would say back in those days that Bruce was so fast that they would come back, watch the dailies, and it would just be a blur, and they'd have to film again. So Bruce was that fast. If Jet was that fast, how much faster was Bruce Lee in 73, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't understand. I know what Quentin Tarantino is trying to present out there, but to me, it's just not believable at the end of the day. With that being said, believability, you know, with Cobra Kai, very popular series.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, on YouTube, now on Netflix. What do you think about that? The Karate Kid, Ralph Macchio, of course, Pat Morita playing Mr. Miyagi.
Oh, yeah.
How do you feel like they've done that in the context of what you guys do? And do you like that? Do you respect that? Have you been one of those people that have been like a consultant for a show like that, if you will?
Right. Great. Karate Kid. Awesome. My connection to Karate Kid, one of the people that brought me up as a choreographer was a man named Pat Johnson. Pat Johnson was the original choreographer for Ninja Turtles, Karate Kid. I mean, Karate Kid, original Karate Kid, Pat Morita level. Wow. And so he was the guy that helped teach me on how to make fight scenes, right? So Pat Johnson, you know, you fast forward, Karate Kid 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Hilary Swank, and then you get to Cobra Kai. And it's kind of cool because Cobra Kai is done by a contemporary of mine, Hiro Koda. And so he's won Emmys on Cobra Kai as the choreographer and whatnot. And so we love it that Cobra Kai is, if you will, continuing the thematics of Miyagi-Do and the whole Ralph Macchio, Billy Zabka. And so we love that. And so we have a lot of respect for it. Obviously, it's more of a, you know, younger teenager type of high school show. But, you know, we still have a lot of great respect. I actually fought Billy Zabka in Shoot Fighter 2. So I go way back with Billy, and great guy. Yeah.
What was that like?
Cobra Kai? You mean Shoot Fighter 2?
Yeah.
Shoot Fighter 2 was awesome. For those of you who love martial arts and going all the way back to Bruce Lee, Enter the Dragon. So some of you may remember Bolo. Bolo was the big bodybuilder dude. There's always the villain. A lot of people remember him from Van Damme and Double Impact. Big Chinese guy. So Bolo was the star of Shoot Fighter. So I was in 2, and I fought Billy Zabka, as you guys know, as on Cobra Kai, and we fought each other in Shoot Fighter 2. So a great time there, and a fun B movie, if you will.
Nice, Chris.
Hey, tell us about the Fighting Lion Championship that you have coming up.
Fighting Lion, super excited about this, Chris. So ISKA. So like when we think of Bellator, UFC, one fighting championship in Asia and Singapore, ISKA is the behind the scenes, right? ISKA is the International Sport Kickboxing Association. So this is the organization worldwide in 50 countries, has their own championship at Disney Coronado Springs Resort. This is 20,000 people in one July 4th weekend, right? Wow. So ISKA is typically known for forms, weapons, fighting, breaking. Obviously, I did self-defense. And this is the longest running ESPN martial arts show. Now, back to your question on Fighting Lion Championship. So ISKA just gave me, as of July, sanctioning for mixed martial arts for youth. Now, people are like, awesome. Well, aren't youth doing this already? No. So Sport MMA will bring it forward for organized, centralized for youth, not only in the United States, but internationally. So the Fighting Lion Championship will be March 11th, first time at Full Sail University, one of the most high-tech schools in the country, if not the world. And so it'll be hosted at Full Sail. Anyways, Fighting Lion, youth, mixed martial arts. We're super excited.
Okay, and that's here in Orlando, correct?
Yep, that's right.
Okay, perfect.
Now you speak about MMA. What are your thoughts about MMA? A lot of people don't necessarily like it. Some people love it. What are your thoughts about it? And then on top of that, have you heard of a little organization called Karate Combat? Because I was actually a pit announcer for it.
Yeah.
Rutan was running that. That was amazing in itself. What do you think about Karate Combat?
Well, let me start with Karate Combat before we go into the MMA. Love Karate Combat. I absolutely watch it all the time. If I watch it too much, Peter. The reason I love it is that karate, and you know, statistics can change a little bit here, but the reality of it is karate, many people consider karate the second most participated sport in the world, only behind soccer. Right? Even if I'm wrong, if it's not number 2 anymore, it's obviously in the top 5, right? Mm-hmm. And so karate has struggled to really kind of hone in from a television broadcast standpoint. A lot of people don't know this, right? So the Olympics, right? So you got judo, 1950s was in the Olympics. Taekwondo in the late 1980s was a spectator sport, now obviously in the Olympics. But karate was not officially until the last Olympics. A lot of people don't know that. We all assume it because Karate Kid, you got a Karate Kid tournament for your neighborhood network, right? Mm-hmm. But the beauty of Karate Combat is you've got it in a television, great rules, great to watch, and a lot of great action. So love Karate Combat, what they have done. Now back to your question about mixed martial arts. Love mixed martial arts. And here's the reason why. Don't just like it because of the action. I like it because the same concept with Karate Combat and the Olympics. Mm-hmm. Martial arts is organized. We have a entertaining rule set. We all agree on the rule set. And we have organized, centralized, and true champions. And now the guys are making significant prize money. So absolutely love it.
Fantastic. Fantastic, man. Well, James, thank you so much for joining us. Can you give us the information if someone wants to get info on your event that's coming up in March? Is there a website or contact info?
Yeah, website for Fighting Lion. I know they're working on it, so it could be a little crazy right now, but it's www.fightinglionchampionship.com. Fighting Lion Championship has all the social media, so if you check it out online, we look forward to talking with you online as well.
Awesome. So good to see you, and thank you so much for joining us, James.
Thanks a lot, James. Appreciate it. Thanks
for having me, guys. Hey, I look forward to seeing you again.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. Here on Timeout. I'm your host, Peter Blake, along with my co-host, Chris Cuff. Some great stuff there. I love the whole rundown of Bruce Lee and, of course, Cobra Kai. We learned all kinds of stuff that we didn't know, and that's why you got to tune into this show at the end of the day. Tell you what, let's go ahead and finish off because we talked about the National Football League. Really quick, I want to touch upon this subject because it is local here. Of course, the Miami Dolphins on a bye, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on a bye, a big-time week for the Bucs as they played the Cleveland Browns. And this was mentioned this week because of Tom Brady and the divorce now. Is there a possibility that Tom Brady comes back and plays for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Would you want that? I think there's a lot of fans that would actually want that. Do you think it happens? Yes or no?
I would like Tom to come back. The team, I mean, he's like a big core of this Bucs squad. They really don't have a lot outside of quarterback, a lot of strength outside of quarterback, outside of Tom. Once he leaves, is it going to be Blaine Gabbert leading you to the Super Bowl? I don't think so. But I do think also there's a lot of talk about him leaving and going on to other pastures. Maybe well, it was Miami, right? Maybe LA. The San Francisco is a big name that's coming up. They were trying to sneak him into in Vegas with the Raiders. So I don't know, man. It's going to be a really interesting story coming up, you know, at the end of the season after they win the Super Bowl this year.
And I'm telling you right now, I'm going to give you a timeout because they got far more than just Tom Brady. They got Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, and of course this year Julio Jones if he can stay healthy. They got and Cade Otton. They still have a defense there. That's the reason why if he wants to come back, it's going to be with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, not with the Raiders. They're absolute dumpster juice this year. The 49ers have Jimmy G. It's a possibility, but the reason why he wanted to go with the Bucs in the first place is to be closer to his kids. I don't see him leaving. I see him coming back because he is still playing at a high level here, Chris. 12 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Now, the Miami Dolphins, who are they playing this week? Because they're definitely in contention, especially with Buffalo kind of losing the last couple games. Of course, they get back on track with beating the Browns and then, of course, the Jets. But the Dolphins, of course, they've been a big-time story with Tua, and that's the reason why I don't believe Tom Brady's going to go there either.
I don't either. I don't. But it's really interesting. Miami has Houston this week, so that's a great,
that's a
nice little nice little pillow to land on after a bye week to kind of generate your juices, rejuvenate a little bit. So yeah, absolutely.
And Houston, they're having their own troubles there. Former Bucs coach and Bears coach Lovie Smith is looking at Davis Mills and switching him out. He had an impressive year last year, but this year not so much. 11 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. So we shall see what happens with the Dolphins and, of course, the Bucs. We haven't mentioned the Jaguars, but hey, it's not that necessarily a long show. Let's go to college football here. Let's talk about it. Georgia's #1. Of course, you got Ohio State #2, Michigan #3, and TCU survives. They're going to be in that 4th spot as they're undefeated. Get a field goal kick, a crazy decision by their coach and Sonny Dykes. Very risky, but they're able to pull it out. Michigan survives Illinois. So now, Chris, it sets up that big matchup on Saturday at the Horseshoe between the Michigan Wolverines and Ohio State Buckeyes. How do you see this matchup playing out?
That is what a perfect setup for this weekend. I mean, it's absolutely perfect. That's a monstrous game. 12 noon. It's not even a night game. It's going to be awesome. I pulled for Ohio State. Michigan, man, I watched some of Michigan last weekend after you timed out me last week on Michigan. They're serious, man. They are really, really serious. But until I see them beat the Buckeyes, I'm sticking with the Buckeyes to pull it out.
I'll tell you right now, whoever wins this game, that doesn't necessarily, for me, eliminate them from playoff contention at the end of the day. Of course, it is about these two teams, and whoever wins more than likely is definitely going to earn that spot. I think it is going to be Michigan, but who knows at the end of the day. Jim Harbaugh's had this team. They beat Ohio State last year. They have a running game, pretty good quarterback play. Their defense needs to step up versus a quarterback and a CJ Stroud because they definitely got some weapons there with the Buckeyes. At the end of the day, I think it all comes down to Georgia, of course, being #1. I think the biggest shocker for me was Tennessee and basically getting their clock cleaned by South Carolina.
South Carolina.
So
South Carolina.
Yeah, and it was a great story while it lasted, but definitely Tennessee pretty much at this point is done. Of course, all eyes are on LSU now. If they win the SEC, is there a possibility they should get in? And in your opinion, should they get in being an SEC champion over, say, a USC who may win the Pac-12 with one loss?
They have some good wins. LSU has some good wins. So, yeah, I think they should be considered to get in to the playoffs. It's going to be tight. It's really going to be tight because USC looks really, really good. And they might want to get out of the SEC,
Yeah. Well, everybody wants to be in the SEC at the end of the day. Speaking of possibly going to a Big 5 conference, there was word this week that Mr. Deion Sanders, who's at Jackson State with a record of 25-5, is talking to the Colorado Buffaloes for a coaching job and the USF Bulls. How do you see that? Good prime time?
How do you like that being down in the Bay Area? How do you like possibly having Deion?
Back up the Brinks truck. Make him your head coach now. He's going to be able to recruit. Everything he's done at Jackson State, he has talked about it ad nauseum about recruiting and player development. That's exactly what the USF Bulls need after the disastrous year they've had right now, 1-9 finishing up versus locally UCF. possibly going 1-10 because I don't necessarily think they have the recruiting. Prime time can recruit. You possibly could have a new stadium on campus. You have a new indoor facility, and he's from here. So it makes sense to hire him. Now, does he want this job? Because, possibly Georgia Tech could be calling Auburn, although it was reported last night that Lane Kiffin could be leaving Ole Miss to go there. So that eliminates the job. But do you want to jump in right into the fire into the SEC, or do you want to go to a program like USF who, by all accounts, has every opportunity here to win in the AAC, and eventually you could have that expansion to where you go to the ACC?
Yes, absolutely. It's really exciting. Kind of sad for Deion to leave Jackson State. He's like the heart of Jackson State, the football and the whole program down there. So it's kind of sad to see him leave that. But, big opportunities are out there. He's proved himself. So we'll see how it goes. I did want to.
Yeah, go ahead.
I did want to hit on a couple of NBA stories before we end the show.
Sure.
Ben Simmons, as Austin mentioned, is going into Philadelphia to play against the 76ers tonight. And it's all about the reception he's going to receive from the fans. Ben, which I am really encouraged by, he's been on the upswing with his points and his play. His scoring percentages went from 16% up to 85%. So he is playing much more efficient, finally getting his game under his feet. Everybody blasted him after 10 games, after being out 2 years, but he finally seems to be starting to get it. What do you think about that?
Well, he's been out for 2 years. It's all come down to effort. It comes down to, can he stay healthy, and can he live up to that potential of being a #1 overall pick? Because that's what it comes down to right now. He's looking like a bust, and I can tell you that the reception in Philly is going to be boo. That's what's going to be boo, boo, boo. Ben Simmons at the end of the day. Let's see if he can play through that.
Yes.
See if they can be successful, because the Nets have already fired their coach. You got Kyrie Irving return, but all that controversy, Kevin Durant. I mean, it's been a complete and total disaster the last couple of years when dealing with the New Jersey Nets. So maybe, Ben Simmons lives up to, once again, that potential that Philly drafted him for in the first place.
And this is a great night for them to do well. Joel Embiid is out. Tyrese Maxey is out. And of course, James Harden is out. That's natural. And Kyrie Irving is supposed to be back for tonight's game. It's going to be a show.
Yeah.
It's definitely going to be a show.
There you go. Speaking of not a show, locally, the Orlando Magic fall to 5-13 as they lose to the Pacers. Somebody mentioned this today. Should they tank because already Baccaro's hurt? Of course, they've gone through the injuries the last couple of years with Jonathan Isaac. He's been hurt. You're finally seeing Mo Bamba live up to that. Wendell Clark is banged up. But in your opinion, I know we're sports broadcasters and not basketball players, but would you like to see this team tank once again? Because it looks like the Bulls are not going to be good. The Magic have that pick. They have their own pick. A couple more building blocks, or is it time for this team to step up and live up to some of this potential, and for these players to play to that potential for this team to actually win some games?
This team is just plagued by injuries. When Wendell Carter Jr. went, he's basically the strength of their inside game. Once he went, you have thin Mo Bamba. You have even thinner Bol just getting shoved away like a stick in the way. He's been doing great. 16, 26 points, different points in games. And then Paolo is gone, who was scoring mid-20s, a couple of 30-point games. Everybody's gone. Cole Anthony is gone. Markel broke his toe. Come on. He stubbed his toe. He's out for weeks and weeks and weeks, a month. So, it's a disaster. And Jonathan Isaac, he was winded after doing layup drills when we saw him at the beginning of the season. He was nowhere near. It's a disaster. They actually extended the contract of Chuma Okeke, but did not extend the contract of RJ Hampton. So is that tanking? I don't know. They don't have to tank right now. It seems to be automatic. But they have fight in them. They're very talented, but the cards are against them at the early this season, and depending on how far they fall back before everything comes back together, they're looking like toast so far.
They are looking like toast. And I tell you what, we'll get out of here on this. Give me some final thoughts here, Chris, on another edition of Timeout. This was a phenomenal show. Great talk about soccer and football and Qatar and how to pronounce it properly. Great visit from Jae-Sang Lee. We talked some great football, got some insight from you. Not too many timeouts this week, 1 or 2. Yeah. It wasn't too bad. We got to come up with some more takes to irk you to, get the timeouts going, but we'll work on that. I agree. Thanks to all of our guests, of course. Thanks to the great co-host there, Mr. Chris Cuff. I'm your host, Peter Blake, live here on Timeout. Thanks a lot for tuning in, and tune in next time where you never know where we may give you that timeout. Have a great night.